Hello and welcome. This is Cheryl. Thank you so much for joining me. We're slowly going through the Spellbinders Crafty Advent Calendar, and today we are on day 12. And in this window, we get a cute little die cut set. Now, this one creates some really cute strawberries, and what I love about the dies in this set is they're the perfect size for using up a bunch of cardstock scraps. So I like to organize my dies before I grab any of my cardstock scraps, and then I like to pick my colors. I did that and I die cut off screen. The one thing about this strawberry die is it die cuts all the little seeds out of there. So you have a couple choices here. You can just put it onto some dark cardstock and cut around it by hand. There's no shadow die or solid die for this to do that for you. What I like to do is take some strong double-sided tape and just put it on the back of the paper while that paper is still in the die. And then I press it down really, really well to make sure that it sticks to all of those little tiny itty bitty pieces. And then I use a die pick on the front to push that die cut out of the die and help to glue those little pieces onto that tape. I wanted these little seeds there to stay intact and stay in there. If you let them come out when you pull them out of the die, you're going to see the cardstock behind unless you put something behind it. So just something to do. You can do it however you want, really. This is just how I like to do it. And then that double-sided tape that's on the back there, I use that for gluing the die cut to my card as well. So it's not that it's going on there and then kind of going to waste. It's going to be used twice. Once I have all of my die cut pieces together, and I like to glue them together with some distress collage medium, it dries completely clear and it dries matte, so you're not going to be able to see if anything happens to seep out. But I like using a liquid glue for this because you have a few seconds to shimmy everything in place. And especially when you're putting die cuts together, that's quite handy because sometimes you don't put it down exactly right the first time, so it's nice to be able to align it. Once those are glued together, I do like to leave them sit for a couple minutes before I start to ink them. For these die cuts, I am going to ink them with some distress ink pads and some ink blending brushes just to get a little bit of shadow and dimension to them. For those seeds on the strawberry, I just took a black marker and I just colored them. To be honest, I actually preferred them better before they were colored. I liked them better just seeing the seeds but not actually having them colored. But you can do whatever feels right for you. You can try one and see if you like it. And if you don't like it, you don't have to do it. For the center of the little flowers, I just colored them yellow. I could have die cut them out of yellow cardstock, but the flower dies in the center of the flowers are all part of the same die. And rather than cutting out excess, even though I always do cut out excess, I figured it was easy enough just to grab a pen and color them. They're a really tiny circle, so it's hard to line up just that on the die. Super easy to just color that. I'm taking my distress ink blending brushes and I'm taking the green one and ink blending on the leaves with some peeled paint. For the strawberries, I'm going to use aged mahogany. And for the centers of those flowers, I just use some spun sugar. I'll have everything listed and linked in the description below if there's something that I happen to forget to mention. You don't have to ink blend on these, but I like how it gives it some shadow. And for the strawberries, it just kind of gives it a little bit of shadow around it and makes it look a little bit more 3D. Obviously, it's not 3D, but it just gives it that appearance. I think if you like to make strawberry jam or something like that and give it as gifts, these would be adorable for making tags or labels for your jars before giving them out. These are perfect for that, and they're a nice size. The strawberries are probably about an inch-ish. There's one that's a little bit bigger than the other, so they're not super big, but for something like that, it would be really, really cute. And like I said, they're perfect for using up excess scraps. For the sentiment, I used the sentiment strips, the banner strips from day 11, and I did exactly the same way as I did on day 11. I used my sticky grid in my die cutting machine, and then I used one of my BetterPress ink pads to ink that plate before running the paper through. I wanted to be able to see the sentiment a little bit. Once I have everything glued to my card base or my circle frame that I'm going to put the strawberries in, as well as the sentiment, I put an acrylic block to hold it down. And what I like to do is I like to start my layout on top of that acrylic block so I can see how it's going to look on my card. But when I lift up my acrylic block and start to glue everything down, I'm not ruining my arrangement. I still have everything arranged so I can remember exactly how I wanted to place everything. But it's just a great way to be able to see exactly where you want everything to go without having to shove it off and try to remember. So I know some people take picture with their phone to be able to try and remember. This is just a super easy way to do it. And because I often put an acrylic block onto my pieces before or while they're drying at different levels or different stages, this is a super easy way to just arrange things while I'm waiting for something to dry a little bit and not have to ruin that arrangement while I'm creating. Now, those little stem pieces, they're actually stems for the strawberries. I chose to use them as stems for the flowers kind of coming down because the strawberries are going to be covered by the big leaves at the top anyways, so you wouldn't have seen the stems if I put them on there. So I thought it would be a cute way to use them by just using them on the flowers. I know the strawberry plants that we have, they often have little stringers, vines, I can't remember what they're called, that go off and we'll get some leaves and flowers on them. And I just kind of thought those would look a little bit like those. I chose to do 3 strawberries on this arrangement. I always like things in odd numbers. I think it looks a lot better. So you can see that there's 3 strawberries, 3 large leaves, and there's 3 flowers, and each of the flowers has at least 1 leaf, often 2, because sometimes 1 looks a little bit odd. Those little tiny flowers, I did take my fingers and curve the petals a tiny bit. They're tiny flowers, so they're maybe like 3/8 of an inch thick. They're not really, really big, so there's not a lot of room to do that, but I always think it adds a little bit of extra dimension and it looks nice. The last thing I'm going to do to my card is add a little bit of stickle in the center of the flower, right on top of the yellow. Just gives it a little bit of extra sparkle. Again, not a necessary touch, but I always love when there's just kind of a little bit of different textures and dimensions when you're card making. And that is it. That is a nice quick card, a great way to use up some cardstock scraps. And like I said, these would make adorable labels on strawberry jam or for spring cards. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you tomorrow for day 13. I really appreciate you being here.